a continental research on the issue of caste and descent-based discrimination in Africa. The reason why I emphasize on this is because since 2019, when we started this work, all the way to 2021, we conducted a series of research, and the final one was published in 2021. But since then, the amount of advocacy efforts and policy influence that we were able to do from our National Human Rights Commission level was immense. And I believe that if the African Commission conducts a similar work, a continental work, it will even enhance the efforts further, both at the national and the regional level. But for research purposes, I believe that I want to share with you 5 points that we should always take into consideration if we are doing our researches, whether we are doing so as a National Human Rights Institution or the African Commission on Human and People's Rights or any other civil society organization or institution that wants to conduct work in this regard. The first one, always we, in addition to having a human rights centered approach to it, I think it is very important that we always take a victim-centered approach to the study. The reason why I mention this is because sometimes when you are conducting research and you speak to, especially in circumstances like this, if you speak to families that are of so-called nobility heritage, what they tell you would be extremely different from what a victim would tell you. In the Gambian case, for example, if you go to the Sarahule communities, what the Gambana people will tell you and what the village heads or the nobles will tell you will be extremely different, in the sense that many of the nobility or those who are enjoying the privileges, they are still in denial. If you ask them, they will tell you either it doesn't exist or it is a customary or religious practice that we've inherited and it is recognized in our customs or religion, therefore it is our right. So you need to speak to the victims themselves to get to the root of the problems. So also we should always try as much as possible to reach to the communities. From the experience of the National Human Rights Commission, some of the communities that we went to were extremely very far and also very difficult to reach. So if you don't put a lot of effort into reaching the communities, sometimes you may leave out people who continue to suffer the existence of caste and descent-based discrimination. Also, the second point would be that when we are doing these types of research, we should focus also on thorough review of legal and policy measures. If you take the Gambia as an example, what we found out was that we have an anti-discrimination clause in the 1997 Constitution of the Gambia, but this is a generic, the usual non-discrimination clause on, on gender, on religion, and the likes. But many a times you will find out that we don't have specific prohibition of discrimination based on caste or descent. So we have to put some attention into this. And also the penal codes of the countries. In the Gambia, we do not have prohibitions that are specific to caste and descent-based discrimination. And we found out that, if we really want to make progress in this regard, you should be able to take somebody to court and prosecute him directly, for violating anti-discrimination clauses based on caste or descent. But what we have currently is that you may have to rely on generic provisions, and it makes it a bit more difficult to find perpetrators culpable and bring them to account. Further, we also found out that on the third point, we found out that it's important for us to revise the curricula of the education system of the countries. In the Gambia, a subject like social studies at the basic cycle school, you would be taught about the existence of different castes in society, from the nobles to the slaves to griots and the likes. And personally, as someone who has gone through this education, I still remember that during the time it was made to sound like nobility would be the best position that you find yourself. And the children know that, or they hear from their parents that, we are of this surname, or we are of this heritage, therefore we are nobles. And this child X, like Mr. Kamara mentioned, child X is of slave heritage. So you find out that even at that level, some children feel that they are superior to others. And we are teaching them about the existence of these caste clusters in our society, and we are essentially perpetuating it to continue, for in future generations. Therefore, these studies that we aim to conduct, when we do, we have to take into consideration the curricular content of our societies, to change it in a way that it will not only educate the students, but also discourage the existence or the continuation of the practice of caste and descent-based discrimination. Also, on the fourth point, it is very important, as per our experience, to disaggregate the data that we are going to collect as much as possible. What we found out that, for example, what a lot of our communities in the Gambia called a slave would face different consequences compared to, for example, someone of another caste or descent origin, like a griot or a smith. So each of these different categories may be facing different types of discrimination. And for example, if you look at a woman or a girl child who is of a so-called slave heritage, she may be facing discrimination of varying layers. First, you'll be discriminated against because you're a woman or you're a girl, and then you will face discrimination because you are from the slave caste. You could even take it further. You could be discriminated because you are a person living with disabilities, for example, or albinism, for example. So all these types of layers or categories of individuals, you should be able to collect data on these respective groups, so that you would be able to target each discrimination type with a different and appropriate solution. And then finally, we found it very useful to, as much as possible, to popularize the findings of the research that was done, because when we did that, we realized that some civil society organizations, even within the Gambia, were able to pick it up, and international, for example, GFOD was able to pick it up and use it for advocacy efforts and push for recommendations and solutions, both at the national and the regional level. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I think I will just end it there and wait for any further questions. Thank you.